so enthusiastic. Enthusiasm literally means God in you. This lady has a vision. This lady, my friend, cares. This lady speaks with great intellect and yet great passion, all combined. And she does it in such a way that it's going to empower you, my friend, help you to understand and move you to action to take better care of your health. She's a health coach, and she's a mother, a grandmother, a glam mother, excuse me. And listen, my friend, she's got a heart as big as Minnesota used to be. Now it's big as Atlanta, where she now resides. She's going to be one of our speakers, which, by the way, we moved our meeting from August 17th to the end of September. We'll give you the date, whether the 21st or 28th. And she's one of our speakers there. And so you're going to hear with great delight, have something to write on to write with, my friend, I'm telling you, because she's going to trigger some thoughts and give you powerful tidbits of information. So Lidy Love, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning. I love life, and I know that all of those of you that are here in this present moment, I appreciate that affirmation this morning about standing in, stretching and living life to its fullest is the moment that we experience what is called the beauty of each living dialogue. But I want to take it a little deeper this morning because it actually is dialogue and communication on the internal, and you can change the external, and what's going on in the internal tells you what's going on, and you might see it on your skin, you might see it on your body, but it's a message. So there's constant dialogue from, you might say, the impact from the external impacting the internal, but the internal exchanges with the external. So as one, we live. So this morning, I would like to actually share a couple of thoughts about knowing versus sensing. There's a book that was written by by Walter Russell. Walter Russell was a man that the Lord spent 39 days with him and told him he could not publish the information for 40 years because man would not comprehend this information, because scientific advancements had to take place and prophecies had to be foretold, and that was going to be cosmic new knowledge for man. So man is here to receive constantly in the moment. When we're in the present moment, like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, becoming supernatural, common people doing the uncommon, we now know that being so enlightened in the moment, that when we receive everything in that space, that we can then, change our lives. Because if we change the emotions, it changes the genes. And when you actually start taking a look at the whole, then we are in that place of constant thirst for knowing more. So knowing is in the stillness. So I want to just read a couple little paragraphs here because it's so profound. It's what the Lord gave Walter Russell, and it's knowing versus sensing. See thou no more with thy outer eyes alone, for thou hast knowing eyes to void the illusions of thy sensing. Throughout long eons, man has walked his earth with his outer eyes of seeing, giving belief to that earth of his body sensing. Throughout the new eons, he must walk with eyes of inner seeing and know me in it, as but visioning in it light of me and light of him. And that was a capital L, light, and of me, capital M, and capital L, light of him, small h. For I am a patient God. I patiently await awakening man. Awakening man is he who knows the light of me in him. Man may choose his own eons for his awakening, but know me he must. Until that day, man's agony of knowing shall be man's alone. His knowing must be his own desiring. Wherefore be thou slave to thy sensing? Rise thou above thy sensing, and be me in thy knowing. So that's the quote, end quote. It says we live in two universes, the universe of sensing and the universe of knowing. The universe of sensing is the visible material, electric universe of motion in which we are familiar. And the universe of knowing is the invisible universe which we cannot sense. Man begins his existence upon the earth with sensing only. He has no knowledge whatsoever when he begins. He lives entirely in the instinctive, electric universe of sensing. And so the nerves of his body are what make him aware of the material existence, and sensations is what he feels with his body. He is electrically aware that he has a body. Electrically awareness of his body does not mean that he knows anything, but because of that awareness of his body, sensing and knowing have no relation to each other. Sensing consists of vibrating waves of two lights of matter in motion. Knowing consists of the one light of spirit, which is still. So that one light of knowing centers all motion, just as the still fulcrum centers the moving center. So here we are. There is no motion in the fulcrum. That's the quiet. We look at life like what we now know is that in the tornado or a hurricane, we say we have chaos in life. And what is being spoken here is coming to that place of where we get to the core to restore. We get to the eye of the storm where there is peace. We look at coming back in and drawing within and saying, I'm going to go into my inner knowing. In my inner knowing, we have three brains. We have a conscious, head, conscious, brain. We have our gut feeling. We say that's your subconscious. My gut tells me. And then we have the superconscious, which is the heart. My heart says, I feel this in my heart. And we have three brains. And so as we begin to take a look at how we vibrate and what the energy or frequency, all of the elements, when we take on meditation or we take on the quietness and we just be still. And Dr. Joe Dispenza has been doing a lot of work around that whole conversation about how we can make these genetic changes and actually calibrating the wavelengths. And this is new wisdom for a lot of people, I know, because some people have said, years ago, I started studying in the quantum energy field and am a certified practitioner in that realm. But one of the things that comes to surface is curiosity, how does that really work? And I'm not so sure that we all understand all of the elements yet, but yet there comes a day where all this comes together. We know that science is, a way of processing dialogue, information that must be known. It will help us actually get through all of understanding the bringing together of that material as we see laboratory studies. But then again, there is an unknown yet, which is God cannot be proven in a laboratory because that which you can prove in the laboratory is limited to matter and motion, whereas God is unlimited. So we have, all of this coming together. So as I'm presenting this morning, I'm choosing to talk a little bit about how we can change our emotions and change genes. And sometimes people say, well, I do personal development and I'm going to walk through my life. I'm going to make some very specific changes. It's the way you think does matter by way of even our DNA. So if we look at this and we say, we used to think that genes created the disease, and now we know that even thoughts can create a disease. So I'm just looking at how we know actually our whole internal dialogue of the atoms just with thoughts are realigning in the quantum field of energy. It impacts what's going on in the liver. The liver will release different enzymes or hormones are released in the brain that merge with other enzymes in the body. And they have to rearrange themselves constant. So there are times you will say that I realize that I know that we all we're all coexisting. And if we get to the point of where we can have co-alliance and we can actually be in a circle of influence, I'd rather hang with those people than those. And we find ourselves already having a vibrational energy or frequency or dance with life that is more joy-filled. And, of course, you feel energized or exhausted. So that's all dialogue. That's all internal dialogue. And as a result of that, you might say, well, when I visit with some people, I feel like my tongue is tied because if there's dialogue going on in the space that you're not even aware of. So all of this is what's called conversation that must be looked at. And so I'm going to take a look at some dialogue around how do we even help and assist our body's flow. And to keep our body in the flow is to know that there has to be communication. And the communication, first of all, is that your bloodstream is the river of life. And the bloodstream has to flow. How that actually flows is that it has to have what is called pathways opened, which means is that there might be some blockages. Just like you have blockages in conversations with thoughts, yes, blockages are in your arteries and in your capillaries. Absolutely everywhere. We know that the tributaries, we can call it like a river, you can have things that are blocked up. And that can be calcification or can be constriction of stress. You think about a straw. A straw is the largest blood vessel in the man's body that exercises. And when there is stress, when they're working out, that is stress where there's constriction. They must have those pathways open. Now, if somebody has not had a lifetime of exercise, then those are narrower. And as they are narrower, the body will find a constriction. It will reroute itself. It is that brilliant. So the body is brilliant, always looking for how we can go through life. So the water-soluble nutrients that the body is in need of are also something that we constantly need to put into the equation. But how the bloodstream is going to be able to give what is called the flow, it has to have hydration first. And hydration is really starting to surface. People are beginning to understand that there is money in this bottled water industry. And as a result of that, water often has been called, out as a purified water, alkaline water, structured water, and it's got, bond angles are important. Yes, all of this, purifying the water molecule, because the water molecule has a memory, and that if it's clean, it has more, let's call it like a new canvas. You have a lot of space to be able to carry the goods. So if you start with what is called distilled water, and that water molecule being like that clean canvas, it will carry along, partner up with the goods that need to be delivered into the body. So the bloodstream is the carrier, but the water is what will allow that river to flow freely. And if we are dehydrated, we have sticky blood. It is slow flow. And oftentimes you'll have symptoms that will show up, such as I have cold feet, cold hands, cold nose, my body temperature is just not right. There's something that's not quite in this scenario showing up in the right way. So that's the beginning of this dialogue. We're starting to look at the body not communicating in its proper elements. So now, when we begin to say what kind of water, structured water, bond angle must be right, and there's two membranes on the cell. One is the easy channel that goes through. If the water molecule is not exactly right, the bond angle, it cannot pass through the water channel completely to get to the nucleus of the cell. If you make a pointer finger and a thumb circle, and you put both of your hands together, look at that like there's a membrane outside of that circle, and that the circle you're making is the water channel, the membrane, the brain, which is called your gatekeeper of the internal part of the cell, to the internal part of the cell. If the water molecule's not proper, it holds itself on the outside of that membrane, and it literally puffs up. Think about like when you have puffy eyes or puffy feet or ankles, or you're starting to feel like you have pins and needles in your feet. I mean, your legs are swollen, stabbing, burning pain, creeping numbness eventually, tender, swelling, in your heels when you put your shoes on. It's like, oh, my feet don't feel comfortable here. So those are little signs that your body's saying, I'm dehydrated. And your body needs more delivery of the water to the nucleus of the cell. So let's still look at this. You have these two, so-called circles, side by side, independent cells, and they have to be independent because they make up tissue, and they must be linked together, just touching, but not, let's call it, that's making up tissue, not to have a space between. So here's what happens. The internal part of the cell needs the water. The outside of the cell is swelling, and it's swelling, but the inside is shrinking. So make this, the circle smaller and see how that looks. Do you have a hole? Do you have a gap? Probably so, right? So this is what's happening. When the water remains on the outside, the inside is still dehydrated. And so incontinence, for example, would be a perfect sign of dehydration. And we can have like sticky blood, and sometimes it looks like blood pressure. And we can have elevated levels of sugar in the body. And that is another concern, right? The organs can't function. So it ends up being a breakdown. And we have dehydration, increases the acidic state of the pH of the body. So it means potential hydrogen, pH, potential hydrogen, and hydration, let's just call it, is acid. So if that, you have increased acid, then what is happening is that it turns into what is called the next deficiency, because the water molecule is not delivering the goods, and you become deficient. And that lowers your energy. If you have lower energy, and you might say, I just can't get enough kick in my day. I'm just like, my energy state is low. And then that leads to a dysfunction. These organs cannot function without food. Your whole body cannot function. Your brain can't function. Everything begins to dissipate. So that becomes flaccid, I like to call it. Think of it like muscle atrophy. Think of it like the organs become weak. So that's flaccid. You increase your state of being weak. And then that leads to dis-ease. Dis-ease in the body later on can be labeled with what is called a condition. And that is what is called the passive state. One thing leads to another thing. You can have issues with low oxygen. You can have levels of anemic behavior, and so on. So we know that the body is a machine. You can call it a machine, constantly manufacturing new cells, and the cells have a life. And this is the best part of the news. I say if the cells become weak, your body has a warehouse full of new stem cells, but you have to have the body to be strong enough or have alert enough to be able to go and open up that door so that the stem cells become released, because those stem cells are waiting there to do something. And that's why a child heals very quickly. Elderly people, not as quickly. Why? Because the body doesn't have that energy. So if we go say, I want to cancel out all of that challenge And I want ease, function, efficiency. Then we must look at hydration and having that bond angle right. So in the conversation today, the hydration drops you put in distilled water are the step one to the conversation. And you've got clean water, you've got the clean slate, you've got the ready to take up all the resources, and then we begin to put some more, pieces into this equation. So I like to say add some boron. Why? Because the brain, second largest mineral needed in the brain is boron. Add that to your water. And as you add the boron is the mobilizer. It is the mobilizer of calcium. So if we need, calcium in our body for our structure, our bones need it, our teeth need it, our fingernails need it, every part of our body needs calcium. In order for your heart to actually have palpitations, stretch, and reflex, it has to have the calcium. But the calcium's locked up if boron's not present. Boron mobilizes calcium. It's the same as it is in the field for the plants as it is for the human. And we know that now, because of science unveiling some of these resources for us, that here we are having these accessible to us. So decal boron is a liquid. You add drops to your water, and I just take a dropper full and I put it in the water, and that's my water for the day. My hydration drops in the water, my decal boron in the water, and I like to even put the pure mag in there because the magnesium is part of the boron/calcium conversation. So let's look at this just for another minute. Boron is a boss. Boron will mobilize anywhere in your body where you have calcification. If you have plaque in your arteries, that is calcified calcium. If it is that you have poor sleep behavior, you could even have calcification in the pineal gland, which produces the melatonin, and subsequently that can be dissolving. So you want to dissolve that. If you have plaque in your eyes, it's called glaucoma. You can actually literally put that drops in your eyes. And it is boron. So it's going to mobilize calcium. It means it's going to begin to dissolve what's going on if it's calcification. And if it's going to be soaked through your eyes and it's like your eyes don't need it, you might say, well, then I know it's going to get into the brain. So no matter what you're doing, remember, it's all deliverable. It's the right size, and your body can receive it. Well, what about kidney stones, gallstones, bone spurs, heel spurs? That's all calcified calcium. We have enough calcium coming yet into our food, and we have a lot stored in our body, but it's not being utilized. Just a clue. Just a clue. We begin to start to take a look at this and say, what can I do? Start with supporting you, all of what you are, which is a temple, and that your temple becomes your privilege and opportunity to be able to support. So here we are. Now, we say that we have some, amalgam in your teeth. Let's look at what goes on as your body has toxins from the environment, from the water that you might be drinking, the food you're eating, from the air you're breathing. There's toxins in the air. If you've never seen a chemtrail, it's time to look up and see some of those, I like to call them roadways in the sky, the white roadways. That is patterns, but those are chemtrails, those chemicals that are coming down on us. We are, you might say, a victim of circumstance, but you can take control of your own destiny. Where are you living might be one of the situations you say, well, I'm going to get away from, maybe some of these patterns. But, pretty much we live in a space where, like Ralph Nader said, you think that you're living on top of a mountain and you live in the most, beautiful sanctuary. He said you have acid rain. So no matter where you are, we all are, subject. So do the best that you can. But what happens here is that when looking at what is invading, we have to chelate the garbage. We have a product that's called Living Minerals and the Mineralizer. People, I'm going to say this is going to be bigger than CBD World. I promise you, because humic and fulvic are the critical partners that have to be in place in order for us to be able to have what is called freedom. So, chelation. If you have amalgam in your mouth, you have fillings in your mouth, that is actually 54% mercury. 5 years later, they've taken these amalgams out to take a look at what's going on, and in the studies, and they found only 26% mercury left. Where is it? It's in your body. So we have it there. You might say, I never had one cavity till I was 17, and I had 17 cavities. So how did that happen, right? So here we are today looking at a chelator. Humic and fulvic is ancient lush vegetation that has decomposed to the point of where it is going to help us have the proper minerals in our body so that our body can actually deliver the goods. I read an article yesterday about the fact that they consider the humic fulvic to be what is called America's Shilajit. And a Shilajit is a adaptogen. It is an adaptogen that is a plant source that your body adapts to. And a lot of people are taking that in for challenges because they understand that it will go after the body's condition and go after all of the invaders. Now, humic and fulvic, living minerals, they chelate inorganic and organic. And inorganic are the toxins. And remember, you got the water to deliver it into the nucleus of the cell. It's going to go and help the inner part of the cell with pulling the toxins out. That's the first step. Secondly, it chelates organic, the food that you're eating, so that if your body gets the food quicker, you take it with your meals, and it gets it quicker, then all of a sudden, here's what we got. We have a body that's actually going to say, thank you. I can function at a higher peak potential. I have improved my internal vitality, and everything shifts. And we know that we, again, say, I have to release these stem cells. How do I do that? That's with the Vitalize, and the Vitalize actually knocks on that door, if you will, because it also has a laminin ingredient, which is a highly sticky protein that will be delivered to the area of where that stem cell goes. So let's give you a little insight that when the stem cell is released, it's generic. The body says you're going to become a blood cell, bone cell, skin cell, whatever cell. It gives it its identity. It gives its migration instructions, and then it sends along the laminin, which is the highly sticky protein, so that it adheres to the area where it's weak. Because oftentimes, when the body is trying to heal, it has a hard time because the ability to get there, first of all, and secondly, to stay there, is the other piece of the equation. And when they even do injections in the body cannot hold that injection because it doesn't have any laminin. So remember that the body has all of the resources. It has all of the brains. It has all of the intelligence. It has all of the brilliance, and it just needs us to support it. And that Vitalize also has the proper B12. And B12 is absolutely critical. Why? Because if there's even a pregnant woman, she needs more B12. It's a water soluble. It's a methylcobalamin. It is not a cyanocobalamin. Cyanocobalamin is a cyanide bond. Yes, indeed, you can go and look at some information around that, but knowing that when I even years ago looked in my father's nutritional supplements, as well as reading supplements from other companies, the cyanocobalamin is usually found in B12. That is the primary because it's cheap, and B12 methylcobalamin is not. But signs of dizziness, forgetfulness, unexplained fatigue, vision issues, pins and needles, in your legs, you sit for a long time. These are all little signs of B12 deficiencies. So our body gives us all the signs. The dashboard, if we had a dashboard, it would give us lots of knowledge and tell us exactly how to function. But this is why we come to be standing in that place of knowing, and knowing that the science and that whole spiritual element, when God gave Walter Russell the answer to how science seeks cause. And the question was given to him, how do you think spiritual and material science can best be united to serve the welfare of humanity and raise the standard of living for all? And the answer was, it can best be united by getting rid of the disunity in both. Science is material. It is concerned only with effect, and that is why it has so little knowledge. It says, we are not interested in anything we cannot prove in the laboratory. Oftentimes people will say, what is it made of? How does it work? How does this? And here's what we do know. God cannot be proven in the laboratory because that which we can prove in the laboratory is limited. Like I said in the beginning, it's that matter and motion to effect of cause. But every laboratory experiment there is always a third unexplainable quality which is necessary to produce the effect. The third quality is the equilibrium, right, of cause and effect. So when science at last verifies God, the hundreds of the primitive doctrinal religions will topple and a new race will arise from that wreckage, because science has found that there's a radar, right, and heretofore known as a phenomenon. So I have full confidence that science will eventually verify God, and that God the Creator is a scientific fact, and His creation is a material manifestation of that scientific fact. So here we are, living in a time where we can actually be open to speak this, read this, right? And that if we now know that it is important for us to understand that and comprehend that nature that we live in the law of love, and the standards of living must be high and beautiful, because love can only bring happiness through the interchange of all things, material, mental, and spiritual. And with that, Dr. Stan, over to you.
Wow. Wow, Lidy. Wow. Did y'all get this?